everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller, along with Will Ragatz of Sports Illustrated, inside TCO Performance Center. And guess what? We're going to talk about Vikings, training camp, practices, football. And here's where I want to begin, Will. Today, we had a convoluted conversation with Kevin O'Connell about when JJ McCarthy would get first-team reps. And boy, was there a lot of words used. And it went over here, and then it went back over there, and then it came all the way back around to, yes, there will be a day where JJ McCarthy receives first-team reps. When that day is, we do not know. And it seemed that Kevin O'Connell was implying that they are still installing and that when the installation is over, then there could be first team reps. Here's what I want to start out with. You tell me the date in which JJ McCarthy actually receives first team reps, because that date was not today. He was still entirely with the second team. Go.
I think right now the date that I would pick would be Monday. This coming Monday, because if I have the training camp practice schedule correctly memorized, they have an off day Thursday, and then another off day on Sunday. So that would kind of give them a little bit more time to build up towards that come off an off day, and then not an off day that's super close still, like this one on Thursday, and start to get McCarthy involved with the first team a little bit, which I agree, like that's inevitably going to happen at some point. That is kind of where we're building to, and that we're eventually going to get there. It's just going to be a slow progression of continuing to get him lots and lots of reps with the twos, which they have been doing. Start to kind of see him taking the things that he's learning inside the building and translating them onto the field, which I don't know what your opinion is of what we've seen from McCarthy, but I've been impressed relative to the expectations that I came in with. There's definitely been some rookie moments, some things where he's maybe holding on to the ball too long, and you can tell he isn't quite sure what he's looking at, which makes sense when you're playing against the Brian Flores defense. But there's just been a lot of arm talent on display. The way he's able to zip the ball into certain windows, the way he's able to actually layer it times. That's happened in the red zone a few times in these 7-on-7 drills. And just overall, I've been pretty impressed with what we've seen from McCarthy. Sam Darnold's been kind of what I expected, so I wouldn't say that the gap is closing a bunch, but over time, I think it's going to get really tempting to the Vikings to see what McCarthy can do throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison.
I think it's a great pick. I don't think it's quite going to be this week. It went through my mind that maybe after the first preseason game, it could be, depending on how long they want to wait and how those practices go when they are back in pads after not being in pads today. So they want to probably rack up a number of padded practices to get a sample size against full speed with the footwork and all those other things to tell us or tell them, here's exactly where he stands. Because the first padded practice had, 12 reps for everybody, just not enough to be able to really put together a sample of saying, well, this is how good Sam is, this is how good JJ McCarthy is. And we did talk about yesterday with Dane Mizutani how Sam Darnold had a pretty tough first day in pads. So did Kirk Cousins against this defense. And I don't think you can judge it really yet, but I agree with you that McCarthy has been more comfortable than I expected. His throwing has been less inaccurate. Sorry if that's a double negative. More accurate than I expected. But I just, when I say less inaccurate, I think it's more right, because I thought it was going to be spraying the ball all over the place when we got here to training camp, and he really hasn't been. There's been some overthrows and some passes that maybe didn't require as much zip as he gave them, but it hasn't been, oh man, this guy is all over the place as he was a little bit in minicamp. I think we're getting there. We're taking steps every day, a little bit more comfort from JJ McCarthy in order to get those first team reps. So I do buy that Kevin O'Connell is telling the truth. I just don't know exactly when that's going to happen. But I need you to put, and I like to put people on the spot with this, put some sort of letter grade on JJ McCarthy so far, or that's a good metric. Like,
yeah,
in comparison to what you thought, so you can grade on a curve for what your brain expected going into training camp and then what you've actually seen.
Yeah, based on expectations, I'm debating between a B plus and an A minus right now. I think I'll go B plus because there's still been some things. There's been a few misses, which is totally understandable. Like I said, I mean, today he had an impressive kind of portion in the red zone 7-on-7, but there's no pass rush in those, and there were some reps where he's holding onto the ball and he's getting through his reads, and that's a good thing. But eventually, you're going to have to get there and be able to speed it up and get the ball out and make the right read quickly. And so there's some of that. There's some things he still needs to work on, of course, but yeah, it's at least a B plus for me just because of the ball placement and the accuracy. And I mean, he talked recently about feeling really a lot more comfortable now than he was in the spring, and I think that's showed. I mean, he is going out there and he's hit some deep balls even, which have been maybe a little bit underthrown, but they've gotten there. There was another one today early in practice that was like 55 yards through the air to Tristan Jackson. And then just in those 7-on-7 periods, the accuracy. I mean, he had a ball that he just rifled into the back of the end zone to Jashawn Jones, the rookie out of Maryland. There was a one to Tristan Jackson in the back corner of the end zone against man coverage that was pretty perfectly placed, and another one on a back shoulder to Lucky Jackson that Jackson dropped. But it was a really good ball. And so you're standing there and you're watching and you see the vision. You're like, all right, I see what you were cooking, Vikings. I understand the upside of where McCarthy could be if you're going to see this accuracy, if he's going to combine that with really a kind of an eventual mastery of Kevin O'Connell's playbook they're hoping. So, yeah, it's another thing is you need to keep in context, I think, when we're comparing McCarthy and Darnold, that McCarthy's going against second-team defenses with the second-team offense, and Darnold's had some trouble, I think, with some really good players, Cam Bynum, Josh Metellus, Byron Murphy, making plays with the first-team defense. But, yeah, overall, I don't know if anybody who's been watching all these practices would disagree that I think McCarthy's just been a little more eye-popping of the two.
Oh, I do agree, and B plus is the right grade. I couldn't give him an A because he hasn't taken any first-team reps yet.
Yeah.
If he had already stolen first-team reps, even a single one of them from Sam Darnold, then maybe I would have been able to say, okay, all right, let's give him an A, because the way that he has gotten out of the huddle to the line of scrimmage, called the play, and the confidence in which he has run the offense, just starting there. I watch for that because we got to see that on display with Kirk Cousins for years as someone who was in command of everyone, understood where everyone was supposed to be lined up, got the play call in. You don't see body language of Kevin O'Connell being like, come on, or any confusion or putting the hand on the helmet. Like, what's being said in there? I mean, it looks like he's getting the call, hearing it, understanding it, going to the line of scrimmage, signaling to everyone where they're supposed to be, and then the actual throwing of the football keeps getting better on a daily basis. And we want to rush and see all the practices at once, like when you like a Netflix show and you watch 11 episodes in a row. That's what we want from this. We can only do it day by day. You can only watch it once a day. And I'm sure there will be practices that are a step back. It also probably can't be an A until there are more padded practices, because once we get 10 under our belts, then we will really understand, because the difference in the quarterback's body language, in their faces that you can see from the sideline when the pass rush is coming, they've got some pretty good pass rushers. I guess I should have been talking a little bit more. We're just so focused on the quarterback about how good Flores' defense looked on day one. It looked very good. And you mentioned it. They have one of the best safeties to ever play the game. They have one of the most unique players in Josh Metellus. They have a total psycho in a good way in Brian Flores and all the different things that he does. And we should expect the quarterbacks to look pretty confused when it comes to the padded practices and speeding it up. And O'Connell talked about that. But as far as checking off the boxes of what you wanted to see, you wanted to see the arm talent continue to improve with the accuracy. You wanted to see the comfort, the confidence. You wanted to see how he even reacted when he got to the podium and talked to us. Did he look like he was in over his head? Did he look like he was a little scared? Not talking to us. I just mean when he's answering questions about how it's going. because sometimes you can get that like, yeah, I'm trying not to, and it's not like that at all with JJ McCarthy. If no one told you it was a first round pick who was playing quarterback out there, you would know it was a first round pick. I think when you watch JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, he's always kind of had that just like swagger and confidence to him, I think, going back to his time at Michigan. And it's just, he's got a fascinating story of just, he's a guy who worked really, really hard. And he said to us early on after he was drafted, he just edited his life when he was like 15 and got his first offer, I think, when he was in 7th grade. And he just made it to this point, and so far has been mostly pretty impressive. Again, the context of going against 2s versus Darnold going against 1s, going against Flores' defense, regardless of which unit is out there, just the complexity and the aggression that you're going to see has led to some confusion and some mistakes and some batted passes at the line of scrimmage and some times where he's holding the ball and then maybe he ducks out and runs, which is another thing that JJ McCarthy has shown he can do a few times. There was a play today where he had a play action fake and booted left and didn't see anybody, and he was able to run for like 10 yards because he has that level of athleticism that someone like Kirk Cousins did not. And he's a lot younger, of course, but that was another thing that kind of, I think, is just part of the broader appeal of JJ McCarthy is he's got that mobility both within the pocket and then to be able to escape the pocket and make some things happen as well. So I have been impressed with JJ McCarthy. I think we're both in agreement. It's probably a B+. This was day 6. One of those 6 days was like a total walkthrough. So 5 real practices, only 1 in pads. It's still very early. We have less than 2 weeks until the first preseason game, but a bunch more training camp practices. A bunch of those are going to have pads on. We're going to have joint practices and preseason action and a bunch of reps to really evaluate JJ McCarthy at full speed. But so far, I think the Vikings have to be pleased with what they've seen.
I also think that some of Kevin O'Connell's approach to talking about this was almost a message to us in saying, now don't you guys try to push this, because he wants to do this entire thing on his own timeline, the way that he laid it out from the beginning with his plan, with the McCarthy plan. That's what he's going to do, and he's going to stay with his boxes to check, and he's not going to let us asking him questions every time about McCarthy and when he's going to get those first team reps intimidate him or influence him into giving him first team reps just because we keep asking. And he was a little defensive even about a depth chart when Nick Mullins came up. Like, oh, there's no official depth chart. Okay, all right, I get it. All right. But you understand that we're very interested in when JJ McCarthy is taking the first team reps, which leads me to another question on that, which would be, what would the date be of training camp that if he did not have any first team reps, you would say, well, what's going on here? Because right now, totally fine. As he said, I mean, they're installing stuff, they're getting the basics down, and they've had one padded practice. I don't think anybody's really asking other than just out of curiosity, but not leading, hey, when are you going to play McCarthy? If it's date what, are the questions a little more pressing?
I think maybe that comes after preseason 1, which would be around 2 weeks from now, maybe a little less than 2 weeks from now. That would be the time where I would start to, I mean, at that point you're in kind of mid-August. You're getting closer to the real thing, and you start to wonder, because it has been 2 weeks at that point since Kevin O'Connell mentioned the likelihood of JJ McCarthy getting some eventual first team reps. So for me, I mean, I think going back to the first thing I said of my guess being this upcoming Monday, that still might even be a little early. But then it's somewhere in that kind of week and a half window leading into the first preseason game and coming out of the first preseason game, where if by that point he still hasn't taken any with the first team, then I don't know. I don't know. It'll depend, I guess, how he continues to look just on a daily basis. But that would, I think, raise some questions for me at that point.
what makes it hard is just that we don't know what they're looking for exactly. We know the results of the plays, which in preseason and training camp can even be a little confusing, because I saw a video of Matt LaFleur breaking down an interception by Jordan Love, and he was talking about how the receiver just ran the wrong route on a choice route, but also that Jordan Love didn't have his footwork completely right. And if he did, then he would have seen he was running the wrong route. And you're like, okay, well, no one thinks that Jordan Love is bad now because of this camp interception, but it's all you have to go on is just the results of what it looks like, as opposed to they know exactly what the routes are supposed to be. It should be working, but after 5 real practices, that becomes a little harder for us to evaluate. So they will have an idea of what he needs to accomplish or show, but also you can't mix him in there a little. I mean, right? Though, isn't there a part of you that says that? Like, you can't, we
want to see it,
right? I mean,
we want to see it.
Justin Jefferson, have him throw you the ball a little. Justin Jefferson's doing an NFL Network interview, and they're asking about McCarthy, and all he could say is, "Well, my locker's next to him because." Hasn't taken any reps with him really yet so far. I think you could probably mix a few in there. Do you think that Kevin O'Connell, this is not a leading question, just curious about your opinion, is being too cautious with young Mr. McCarthy?
No, I don't at this point. Again, if we're still having the same conversation in a week or 2 weeks and he's not getting mixed in, then I will probably say yes. But no, at this point, I think it's fine. It's been 1 week of camp, 1 padded practice, really, and Sam Darnold is the QB1, and that's been clear since camp started. That's what they signed him for $10 million to come here and be for at least the start of this season, they think. And that's what that's the assumption I've been operating under, really, since they'd signed Darnold and drafted McCarthy and made it very clear to us that they're not going to rush his development. I've been assuming that Darnold's going to start for at least maybe a month, maybe up to the bye week, something like that. Has that opinion changed? I don't know. The ever so slightly, as I watch these two quarterbacks play, I just... It's so easy to be like, I want to see more of number 9. He's kind of fun to watch, and it's just as an observer, as somebody who knows that JJ McCarthy is going to be the long-term quarterback for the Vikings. You're like, let's just see what he's got. Let's throw him out there. The Vikings know exactly what they're looking for. They know the certain benchmarks that they want McCarthy to hit. The way he's understanding the playbook and reading things and tying the footwork and the mechanics and all of that with accuracy and all of these things that are quite complex, I'm sure. But my opinion is shifting just ever so slightly towards the possibility entering my mind that McCarthy could be the Week 1 starter. And I don't want to go there yet.
Percentage. Give a percentage. What's your chance?
Well, I'll say this. I came into camp thinking like 90-10 almost with Darnold. Just the way they had talked about it. There's been other reports as well that like they really they don't want there to be any chance that they're putting McCarthy out there too soon. And this guy's young. He's 21 years old. So I was thinking like 90-10, maybe 80-20. But I don't know. I'm closer to maybe 70-30 now. Maybe even creeping down lower than that. It's still definitely Darnold as the favorite. But 6 practices in, McCarthy has just stood out more to me. And I wonder if when he eventually gets work with the first-team offense, if he could even start to just look better and better once he starts throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and not like Deshaun Jones and Tristan Jackson with no disrespect to those young players at all.
Don't disrespect Deshaun Jones. He's been one of my guys so far.
Yeah.
I feel like he is starting to show more and more each day as the undrafted free agent receiver. I have been steadfast at 25%. I've always thought there was about a 1 in 4 chance that JJ McCarthy started, and I've been trying, as you were talking, to think up an analogous situation. And maybe the analogous situation is when you learn how to drive, and your parents never think you're ready. They just, no matter what, like even if you pass your driver's test, right? They never think you're ready. And when you get behind the wheel the first time alone, you're like, Okay, I'm driving the car and you're not that comfortable with it. You can't keep it the right speed, all those things. But you're driving and you got to make some mistakes out there on the road and you'll figure it out. And that's how you can put it, I think, because it's like Kevin O'Connell is looking at this situation like he knows that this quarterback is going to determine his fate more likely than not, unless it's a crazy San Francisco thing where Brock Purdy shows up or Jaron Hall becomes the franchise quarterback somehow from here. More likely than not, you draft the quarterback and that is your guy and you are tied together with your job security. So you are going to treat it like a parent with their child, driving the car for the first time. And you're always going to be impatient with that. But I think there might come a time, whether it's halfway through camp, the practices against Cleveland, or even in the preseason or regular season, where it might become obvious that he's ready. He's ready to get behind the wheel. And then just do it. That's what I think. With a guy like JJ McCarthy, I don't think that if JJ McCarthy got under center and had a couple of bad games and struggled, that he would just melt and disappear and lose all of his confidence. He just doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. But I mean, I don't know. You never know until it actually happens. But how he carries himself, the confidence in which he carries himself, sometimes you have to let him just fight through it. And I'm not necessarily advocating for week one. I'm just kind of saying. I'm just saying
I
that
might be advocating for it.
You're never going to be fully confident that this person is ready to go unless even Jordan Love struggled for his first few weeks. No one is ever just like, yep. Do you think Green Bay last year, when Jordan Love started the season, they were like, oh, we're totally confident, it's totally fine? Those coaches would have developed him for 2 more years if they could have. It's like, it's how it's always going to be. And there will come a time where maybe we all know it and Kevin O'Connell knows it too. And if he doesn't put him out there at that point, maybe we'll start to question it. Until then, leaving it completely up to him and Josh McCown. Folks, US Cellular noticed that the way we use our phones has gotten to be ironic. We try to put our phones down for dinner, but the menu is on a QR code. That's ironic. We hit like on social media posts that we don't actually like. Ironic. Which is why US Cellular has created Us Mode to help us reconnect with each other and use our phones less ironically. A phone company wanting people to use their phones less? Ironic. Let's find us again with Us Mode from US Cellular. Visit uscellular.com/built-for-us to get started.
Yeah, and I completely agree with their approach to it. I get that. There is, I'm sure, a lot that they can learn and evaluate at a high level of having the film of every practice snap he takes, talking with him about his process on certain things. Where were you looking? What were your reads? How was your footwork here? Asking him and also just observing what he does. And that can tell you a lot about whether or not you think he's ready to go. At a certain point, though, you're not going to know until he's in the game with the bullets flying and you've prepared him as best as you can. And if you think that he's meeting some of these criteria and he's ready to go, just see what he can do in the real game situation. I mean, the guy won the national championship last year at Michigan, was pretty incredible in third down and big moments for them. And yeah, I agree with your point too. There's probably been quarterbacks in the past where they're like, oh, he doesn't seem like a guy who's going to get messed up by some losses or some bad games or whatever. But McCarthy really doesn't seem like that with the way he carries himself, just the kind of confidence that he has, the way that he's even looked on the field in this first week, both from throwing the ball and then just kind of the way he acts out there on the field and carries himself. So I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see. When does he start to mix in some first-team reps? How does he continue progressing from here with pads? What does that first preseason opportunity look like? But on my end, the reports are pretty solid so far, and I'm very intrigued and excited to keep watching and learning more.
Yeah, I think O'Connell said something like players don't fail or quarterbacks don't fail organizations fail quarterbacks, and I just don't agree with that. I mean, maybe Sam Darnold would be the counter example, but that's pretty rare that it's so horrific, and it's not going to be that horrific here. And
It can't be with the pieces they have on offense and the coaches they have.
Exactly, and you
can fail somebody when you got Adam Gase and like nobody to throw to, but that's not the case here.
Also, not entirely convinced that with Sam Darnold. That's really the case either. Yes, I think I could buy into that argument that it was Adam Gase and it was Matt Rule. At the same time, are there some mediocre coaches running around out there with good quarterbacks that are benefiting from them? I bet there probably are. If historically a lot of the quarterbacks who have gone and been thrown to the wolves right away have still, if they're good, they've fought through it. And I'm not saying I don't believe in ruining someone, but it's
only part of the picture.
And I think it's a smaller part of the picture than Kevin O'Connell thinks it is, but I also don't blame him. So I'm kind of dancing on both sides of that fence where I am saying it might be okay to play him if he's ready whenever, and you don't have to be over cautious, but also do your thing. And so I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth. I understand. Let me ask you about what else you've seen here at training camp. Before camp, you and I had a fun conversation on the Porch podcast about the players that you were looking for the most during training camp. So I want to look at, let's just say 5 players who have stood out to you so far, and they can't be Harrison Smith or someone that we all know, hey, that Christian Darrisaw, man, he's dominating Dallas Turner. He looks great. Well, yeah, but not those guys. Who has stood out to you in training camp? Where do you want to
And not quarterbacks.
Well, yeah, because we just
talked about it.
Right.
The first one is one that was on my initial list, and one that if you are following the Vikings super closely, which you probably are if you're watching or listening to this podcast, is Jaylen Naylor, who has just been really incredible this first week of training camp. And that's kind of a continuation of what Jaylen Naylor always does in OTAs and in training camp since he was drafted a couple years ago. This has been, I think, another level of year 3. Jaylen Naylor getting first-team reps and looking really confident. And he's been getting first-team reps and second-team reps and playing with McCarthy, playing with Darnold, playing with Nick Mullins, and just making all 3 of those guys look good with his route running, the burst that he has, his hands. It's just been impressive. It's been every single day 83 is made, I think, at least 2 or 3 catches, and some of them in impressive fashion, a lot of them in impressive fashion. I think he's running away with the third receiver job right now. I don't think that's really a question based on the way that we've seen the reps get allocated and just the way that he's performed. So that's not a deep cut one yet. Maybe I'll get around to a deep cut or two, but Jaylen Naylor is he just pops every time. And I think the big can he stay healthy? Because it hasn't happened very much for him in the NFL or even when he was at Michigan State. But as long as he's healthy, I think the Vikings have their number 3 wide receiver.
I agree with you entirely that going into this, now not that we would ever have a depth chart. Don't worry, there's no depth chart, folks. And don't even think we're suggesting there's one. But if I had to, I would have said Brandon Powell because he established himself as an NFL wide receiver last year when he previously had not been. But Jaylen Naylor was always a major wild card to this. And what has impressed me, Kevin O'Connell brought it up, but he's played a lot of different roles in a lot of different spots. And if you're going to be on the same personnel group as Jefferson and Addison, these are 2 star receivers who can do everything and line up everywhere, except for Addison can't really block. That's the only thing that they cannot do. But aside from that, they can run any route, deep, underneath, short, from the slot, outside, condensed, whatever, which means whoever's wide receiver 3, and they did benefit from this from KJ Osborne at times. Osborne was very smart, understood the whole playbook, could line up anywhere. But I think Naylor's skill set, Osborne was kind of like a Mack truck where if you get him the ball in his hands or if he's going straight, it was pretty good. But I don't think he was a really twitchy route runner, and he definitely didn't have the elevation of Jaylen Naylor. I don't know what he jumped for straight up, but it's very high. It's like an NBA player vertical, at least when he's been out here making some catches. It's not close. He's wide receiver 3 right now, and I think everybody sort of sees the finish line of that, but there's potholes, alligators, and that's just the staying healthy. Can he get around those? The alligators specifically, it's a major problem out there. But you know what I mean. Can he get over those hurdles to get to the point where he's starting and they can actually throw him the football reliably? The talent is definitely there. So I don't have any disagreement with that. Who would be the next one?
Next one for me would be, there's a few defensive backs that I could choose from. And again, I think it's going to be a little bit kind of just weighted towards the pass catchers and the DBs, just because we've only had one padded practice. So I don't have a ton of takes on offensive or defensive linemen. I think Dallas Turner's been pretty solid. We could talk about that. But the guy that I was thinking of right now is Theo Jackson, which it's just kind of an embarrassment of riches for the Vikings in their safety room. And that doesn't include at all the guy they picked in the first round a couple years ago. But they have the best safety trio in the NFL with just the versatile skill sets that really complement each other and really work very well for Brian Flores' defense. And then the fourth guy is Theo Jackson, who I think would start in a lot of safety rooms, or at least be the number 3 guy and be in the mix for rotational snaps. And he's played a little bit. He had a pick against the Eagles last year, 2 years ago. And
last year, yep.
Last year, yeah. And just in training camp has looked really impressive. He's had a few interceptions when they were doing the wide receiver DB one-on-ones in the first padded day on Monday. He looked good. He made some plays there. Just looks like a guy who's always kind of in the right spot and knows where to be, knows how to read what's going on the offense, and just kind of has a well-rounded skill set at the safety position. Again, I don't think we're going to see him very much if all 3 of those top guys stay healthy, but he's being slowly over the last few years, since I think they got him as a waiver claim or something like that, kind of maybe
off practice squad of Tennessee.
Off Tennessee's practice squad. They poached him. Kind of being built up to maybe be in position to be a factor if this happens to be the last year for number 22.
Right, or if Cam Bynum becomes a free agent.
That's
which
true.
Could also
that is
happen. So there is uncertainty, which
point.
They may have planned for with Lewis Cine, but instead, and this is something I said last year and maybe people got annoyed with. I said that I don't really care where the players come from. Okay, you drafted someone who is not good at all, but then found Josh Metellus, who's getting Pro Bowl votes last year and playing 1,100 snaps for you. Whatever, just find good players who win. I don't really care where they came from.
Lewis Cine and Theo Jackson is like the much less consequential, like Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. Like, one of them was drafted really high, but one of them's actually good. So, hey, you found somebody at that spot.
It's a wild sport that way. And it is so clear that Theo Jackson fits the ethos of what the safety room is. Super high intelligence players who can't get enough football and are just tossing footballs around, and they have chalkboards that they're drawing up. I mean, these guys, Harrison Smith, is a football complete psycho. And Josh Metellus is one of the smartest football players you're going to be around. Cam Bynum, he went to Cale. He probably wasn't planning on even necessarily being an NFL player if he went to Cale. And then you have Theo Jackson, who played every position at Tennessee, and here they go. They find another one of these guys that's high intelligence, very versatile, and then kind of balls out when he gets a chance. He makes plays in the game. He makes plays when he gets a chance to make them in training camp. And it didn't work out with the other guy that they picked, but it certainly has with Theo Jackson. So he could be part of the future here. And kind of a lot of other players, coaches, they've been talking about how he's taking another step from where he was last year and still a young player. Doesn't matter where you get them, but I completely agree with that one as well. He is so much on my list that I'm working on a story on him right now of how well he has showed out and how well he is fit in that safety room, which now they have one of the probably most struggling cornerback rooms, but easily the best safety room in the entire NFL. I think it has to be because it's so deep. And it also shows you that safety is an intelligence position first. It's a read and react position first, and it's a physical position second. We know that from Sendejo. We know that from Anthony Harris, and now we've seen it play out again with Theo Jackson. So definitely a shining star of training camp. Who else you got?
And they just added Bobby McCain.
Bobby loves football.
10th year NFL veteran to that safety room, and then move Jay Ward to corner, which is interesting to me, just because I wouldn't say Jay Ward, it would be on my list of guys who have caught my eye for their performance so far, but it certainly caught my eye that he was lining up at corner with just the shorthandedness of that room right now, with Shaq Griffin not practicing, Mekhi Blackman out for the year. Jay Ward, as a big, like 6'3", lanky, rangy DB who played some outside corner at LSU, he played some nickel at LSU, he played safety at LSU. Last year, I mean, he's still listed as a safety on the roster right now, but he's playing corner the last couple of days, and that is just it totally makes sense to me. Like, why not throw him out there and see if he can hang and see if he can do it? And you need to find guys like that, because maybe they'll add another. I mean, they just signed Fabian Moreau. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not see that. I was sitting in here waiting for you. Well, he's been around.
They signed Fabian Moreau, who's like a 7th or 8th year veteran or something. He's been kind of a journeyman the last few years after being with Washington for a while. But
Denver
started 11 games for Denver last year, so he's a starting caliber, experienced veteran type of guy, which you needed in there, and that's more depth. And maybe they won't even be done adding. But yeah, it makes sense to then on the second team kind of unit, experiment with guys like Jay Ward out there. Give undrafted rookie Dwight McGlothern some second-team snaps, which they have been so far. I can't say that I've seen a ton from Dwight one way or another, but the fact that he's getting those reps with the twos as an undrafted rookie, the Vikings are just trying to find answers at cornerback right now because they're so depleted, and they're running Caleb Evans and Duke Shelley with pretty like full time with the ones right now. So it'll be interesting to see how that whole kind of package at cornerback comes together. I think Evans is a fascinating one and always has been to me because the tools are there. Like, he's always had the length and the speed and just the kind of physical profile of being a corner. And he was drafted before Flores, but as somebody who could play now in the Flores system, and then it's just been inconsistent. And he got benched a couple times last year, and the Vikings really might need him. So he's another guy that I've just had my eye on, and it's been kind of up and down, I think, in camp. But if he could somehow put it together in year 3, that'd be pretty big for this team.
Well, I think that Fabian Moreau splits the difference, where it's not Stephon Gilmore and you have to start him, but it's also not somebody who was on a practice squad that they signed from another team or got cut or was just sort of had no experience. This is someone with a lot of experience.
Yeah, I think he started like 50 or 60 games in the league. So
yeah, no, he's definitely been around, and he was on my list. I'm sure everybody made the same list of potential cornerbacks, but I think it says at least something that Evans is going to get a chance to compete, that they didn't just sign someone that will take Evans' place, that he's going to be here and could be depth, and we'll see if he makes the team because it depends on how he looks. But I didn't think that they would be done after Bobby McCain. Okay.
You always make those lists, and I did this too, and you're like, oh, let's go to the big names here. And
right.
Stephon Gilmore, Adoree Jackson, J.C. Jackson, Xavier Howard, and it usually ends up being either somebody you've never heard of, like the first corner they signed to be kind of a camp body, or just a solid Fabian Moreau level guy who isn't going to cost very much. Or I think what you said might be part of it. Isn't going to come in right now and immediately be an obvious starter, but he's going to be like a veteran bar that somebody like a Caleb Evans has to clear if he wants to be in the mix.
Okay,
and Shaq Griffin will be back.
Yeah, right, exactly. So there's now more of an open competition with Fabian Moreau as a part of it, and I like this better than signing Stephon Gilmore. I think just from the perspective of like having to put him in as the starter and maybe taking opportunity away from a Caleb Evans. A Caleb is the one that I want to see more of because it was pretty good at times and then it was not good at times, but I think that he wants it, and I think he wants to develop and get better, and he has some interesting physical tools that could make that possible. We've kind of moved on from the Andrew Booth Jr. train, and it really is more focused on him. But because they don't seem to have a ton of confidence in Andrew Booth Jr. and Dwight McGlothern is a UDFA and Jay Ward was playing safety and now has moved to corner. Like you need a Fabian Moreau to make sure that you at least have a veteran there. So give me one more. Give me one more player that is really, does everybody want to know that Will Reichard missed a couple 50-yard kicks today? Man, you win the kicking competition, then the pressure gets to him right away. Typical Vikings.
I did say that before he took the kick to Alec Lewis. I said, he's going to miss this one because they cut the other kicker yesterday, and it would just be perfect if he missed this, and we could say, he's too complacent now, which of course isn't the case. He did miss 2 from deep and then ended it by like just drilling one from 55. I'm not concerned about that. He's been good. He's got a big leg.
We don't have to get a full breakdown.
You're right.
I was entirely kidding.
You were making a joke.
Yeah, but he did hammer the heck out of the last kick. But who is the next actual player on your list? Unless it was Will Reichard.
No, it wasn't. I will go back to Dallas Turner.
Okay.
Who I mentioned very briefly earlier, because the way that he's been used so far by Brian Flores has been interesting to me, where he's been getting a lot of first-team reps. And that started when Andrew Van Ginkel wasn't participating in 11-on-11. But even now that Andrew Van Ginkel's back, there's been a lot of what I hope to see, which is all 3 of those dudes on the field at the same time. Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner. You can even throw Pat Jones in there sometimes and have the real third down package with all your edge guys out there. But there were times today where I saw Turner start playing almost that off-ball linebacker and then creep up to the line and disguise things. And he just right away looked like kind of a disruptive guy on the edge. And this has been true since we saw him in OTA. He just looks like what you want your starting edge rusher guys to look like, and making plays against the run, getting into the backfield at times for would-be sacks. And then on the first day with pads, he stood out a little bit there as well, which was important. He also stood out in me watching him just get absolutely shut down by Christian Darrisaw a few times, which happens to everybody, and I think is a great learning experience for Dallas Turner and a reminder of just how ridiculously good Christian Darrisaw is. But that's I think Dallas talked about this at some point during this camp, is it's tough going against Darrisaw, but that's just going to help kind of make things a lot easier when you get into the games and you're not going against that kind of guy every single week.
What I like from what we're hearing from Dallas Turner, I mean, number one is when we've talked to him, he's a very impressive guy, just his maturity, and you pick up on when somebody gets it. I don't know if everyone can understand what I mean by that, but even if no matter where you work, someone new comes into your work environment, you probably can figure out, are they fitting in or not? But as far as press conference language, we've listened to thousands of press conferences, and our main skill, which has very little value outside of what we do here, but we've got this talent, is reading in between the lines. And I'll give you a little hack for when you hear a coach talk about a player. Specifics. If you ask a player, well, how's this coach doing? Or ask a coach, how's this player doing? Well, he's out there every day and, he's trying his best and we like what we see from him and whatever. Okay, that's, you can't really take much from that. But if a coach says, this guy came in and did this, and this that we saw him do and we really liked it, then you go, oh, okay, we might have something here. That is exactly what keeps happening with Dallas Turner. Kevin O'Connell went on a long thing about how Dallas Turner came in and started asking advanced questions and understood advanced concepts to the point where he could ask those questions when normally they wouldn't expect that from a rookie. And then we see, and here's the other thing, you have to tie the press conference with the reps. So you see the reps of the first team. And I promise you, Brian Flores doesn't give out reps on draft status. Here's how I know. 2022 draft class. So he is giving him first team reps, rotating in just as much as Jonathan Grenard is out there. It's all tying together. This team is clearly impressed with what they see from Dallas Turner, but I don't know if anybody really knew how smart he was as a person. But you go to Alabama, you work with Nick Saban's defense. But that is a good fit. And we keep saying that with guys with Brian Flores. And what I'm seeing, and Dallas Turner's a part of this, is the defense is now becoming, now that they've had roster control, a reflection of the man who's running it, which is actually really cool to see come together. And I thought Zim had this in 2017. It was everything. It was Zimmer's Deion Sanders over there. And, he was using his Darren Woodson over here and that kind of thing. And it's becoming that way for Flores. And that's, I think, kind of cool to watch come to fruition, because last year it was some of his players and some of not his players, and you're just trying to make it work. But now it's almost all of his players.
Yeah, it was really exciting for the Vikings when they got Brian Flores back. And I think they thought he was going to have some interviews and some opportunities, which never really materialized. But to have year 2 of his system and just a whole year of inventory of learning what worked and what didn't. And he talked about this early in training camp. It's just he's not afraid to try new things and throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And now to be able to build the defense the way he wants to and get more pieces in there that can be versatile and can be just part of his kind of mad scientist chess player approach is really cool to see. They've got the safeties. They've got a loaded outside linebacker room. I think it would be cool if Brian Flores sticks around for a little while longer in Minnesota and they can start to really continue to build up defensive tackle and cornerback and things like that, and kind of just really make this thing into a well-oiled machine for Flores, because I think there's a lot of potential with some of the pieces that they have and with the guy running it. And if you can get that defense humming and McCarthy can pan out to who you hope he can be with Kevin O'Connell and with the pieces that are around him, that's when you'd start to talk about things getting pretty interesting for the Vikings. And that's not going to be the case this year, we're pretty sure, because they still have some holes. They have the QB's a rookie, but that's the plan that they're putting in place that they think could be pretty exciting, I think, as soon as 2025. And that's not to say there's no chance that they could surprise this year, but they could be building something pretty cool here.
Dallas Turner is such a vital part of the defense's success because you've paid Grenard. Van Ginkel's on a 2-year deal, and he's a little bit older. If Dallas Turner clicks and you have the rookie contract advantage there for edge rushers who are only getting more expensive, then it becomes a lot easier. It's a lot easier to find players who can fill spots than it is to find somebody who can change games and impact players.
That's why they traded up to get him.
That's why they traded up for him. That's why
gave up a lot to do so.
That's why I supported it. Even though it was anti-analytics, that's why I supported it. Game changers are hard to find, and Dallas Turner might have the potential to be one from what we've seen so far. Great stuff, Will. Glad to be back doing this.
Did I miss anybody who's caught your eye? I think.
Well, I mean, you have to get a little bit in the weeds for some of them. I see like Owen Porter getting a good number of snaps, which I'm sure you've noticed.
There we go. Outside linebacker, undrafted.
Yep. I mentioned Jashawn Jones. He's probably the other one from that wide receiver group that his route running and his ball tracking is showing up a little bit, but probably not too many outside of that. And then you give the caveat about the pads. Then we're going to really see the offensive linemen when they're doing their battles. Jerry Tillery, what's he going to look like? I can't tell you until he actually starts hitting some people.
Blake Brandel, Jerry Tillery. Those are guys that are interesting, but we got to see more days with pads.
And mostly I've just watched the quarterbacks. So thanks everybody for watching / listening, and we will definitely do this again as training camp goes on. See you later.
Football.